It was March 2022, one of those damp Saturday afternoons that the city insists on having, even at the end of winter. I had prepared my signature pot roast, the same recipe I'd been making since they were little, with authentic spices and fresh vegetables from the market. The table was set with the embroidered tablecloth I received at my wedding, the crystal glasses I only use on special occasions. Because this was special, it really was. My 3 sons had all received promotions at the same company. What father wouldn't be thrilled? Robert arrived first, always punctual when it comes to free food. At 45, my eldest son had developed that successful executive's belly, and the air of superiority that comes with it. "Dad, you really outdid yourself today." "Huh? It's like you actually have money to spare." The first stab. I smiled, just like I always did. Michael and Andrew arrived right after, with their families in tow. My daughters-in-law greeted me with those fake air kisses. My teenage grandkids barely looked up from their phones. But that was fine. Family is like that, I thought. The important thing is being together. During dinner, they talked about their promotions. Robert was now a regional manager. Michael was taking the comptroller position. Andrew was joining the main legal team. All at Millennium Construction, all moving up in life. I listened with pride, asking the right questions, showing genuine interest. It was when they finished eating that all hell broke loose. Robert stood up, grabbed his wineglass, a Cabernet I had bought specially for the occasion, and said, "A toast to our father, who has finally accepted that he is nothing in life." The silence lasted less than a second before the explosion of laughter. Michael bent forward, roaring. "It's true," he said. Andrew chimed in, wiping away tears from laughing so hard. At least now he'll stop giving advice about things he knows nothing about. My daughters-in-law laughed too. The grandkids laughed. My own table, in my own home, turned into a courtroom where I was the convicted defendant. "Remember when he tried to give opinions on buying Robert's apartment?" said Patricia. My eldest daughter-in-law, as if he knew anything about real estate. "Or when he wanted to comment on investments," Michael added. "Dad, with all due respect, you barely know what a savings account is." I remained seated, my fork suspended in the air with a piece of meat I could no longer swallow. My stomach had become a cold to heavy stone. Robert continued his humiliating speech. "It's better this way. That you accept your limitations. People like you should settle for the minimum and stop dreaming big." That phrase, that exact phrase. I heard it when I was 7 years old, when a teacher said that poor kids like me shouldn't dream big. The same phrase that motivated me to build everything I built. And now, 60 years later, my own son threw it in my face. "We just want you to be realistic." "Dad," Andrew said, faking kindness. "Accept your situation and stop meddling where you're not needed." It was in that moment that I felt something change inside me. A coldness that started at the base of my skull and went down my spine like melting ice, for the first time in decades. My mask of the submissive father began to crack. Why didn't they know? They had no idea who was really sitting at the head of that table, cutting roast beef, with hands that had signed multi-million-dollar contracts. They didn't know that the poor guy who always asked for help was Charles Samuel Roberts, the CEO of the Roberts Group, the same company that controlled Millennium Construction, where they had just been promoted. I swallowed the piece of meat in my mouth, took a sip of wine, and smiled. "You're right," I said with the sweetest voice I could manufacture. "A man my age should know his place." They clapped. They literally clapped. And it was in that moment that the real Charles woke up, the double life, to understand what happened at that table. You need to know the double life I've been living for over 20 years. A life so well constructed that not even my own children suspected the truth. To them, I was Charles Samuel Roberts, a 65-year-old widower who lived in a simple house in a working-class neighborhood, drove an old 2010 Nissan Sentra, and lived off my late wife's pension, plus a small teacher's retirement. A man who bought clothes at discount stores, shopped at the wholesale market, and always asked for help when the electric bill came in high. This version of me wore sandals at home, religiously watched the 6 o'clock news, and kept coins in an empty coffee can. He complained about the price of gas, haggled at the market, and talked about these crazy prices every time we went out to eat, which was rare because money was tight. It was such a perfect performance that sometimes I forgot it was a lie. The real Charles was someone completely different. Someone who wore Armani suits, drove an armored BMW, and commanded meetings in downtown offices. Someone who had started with a plot of land inherited from his father in the 82nds, and built a real estate empire now valued at over $50 million. When my wife Josephine died in 2001, I had a choice. I could reveal our true wealth to the children, because Josephine always knew. She was always my silent partner. Or I could protect them from the corruption that easy money brings. I chose to protect them. I thought it was love. What a bitter joke. During the week, I was the CEO of the Roberts Group. I analyzed projects, signed contracts, made decisions that affected hundreds of jobs. On weekends, I returned home and pretended to have trouble understanding the phone bill. "Oh, son, can you check this for me? I don't understand these modern things." They loved explaining the basics to me. It made them feel important, superior. Robert especially, always with that condescending, professorial air. "Dad, this is how credit cards work. Dad, let me handle this. You don't have to worry." I let them believe for 20 years that they were the smart ones in the family, that they had inherited their intelligence from who knows where, while I was just a well-intentioned, but limited, family ornament. The 2-bedroom apartment in the working-class neighborhood was real. I really lived there, among piles of cheap clothes and discount furniture, 3 blocks away, in a building I had built myself, and where I kept a penthouse under a corporate name. I kept my real life, a walk-in closet with designer clothes, an art collection, a library with first editions, a climate-controlled wine cellar. It was there that I received Dr. Paul Carver, my lawyer, and only confidant, a man of integrity who for 15 years insisted that I should tell my children the truth. "Charles, this farce is going to cause problems. They have a right to know who their father really is." I always refused. "Paul, you don't understand. I want them to build their own paths, to have their own merit. If they know I'm rich, they'll get comfortable. They'll become parasites, as if they hadn't become that anyway. For decades, I watched my children grow up believing I was a dead weight in their lives, that they had to put up with me out of obligation, help me out of Christian charity, always with that air of martyrs, as if supporting their poor old dad was a terrible burden they bore with heroic resignation. Robert graduated with a business degree, got an internship at some company. 2 years later, coincidentally, Millennium Construction, one of my subsidiaries, had a perfect position for him. The HR manager, without knowing who I was, hired my son based purely on his resume. Robert never knew his luck, had a name and address. Michael and Andrew followed the same path, accounting and law, respectively. Both were conveniently absorbed by the same company that had hired their older brother. What a wonderful coincidence, right? I watched from afar, through discreet reports, their promotions in the company. I felt proud when they received praise from supervisors, worried when they made mistakes, but I could never show that I knew. When they came home talking about projects, I pretended not to understand anything. How interesting. "Son, you're so smart." They swallowed it all. The worst part is that they became good professionals. Really. Robert had natural business instinct. Michael was meticulous with numbers. Andrew understood complex contracts. They didn't need my invisible protection to thrive, but I kept protecting them anyway. Until that night in March, when I discovered that, to them, I wasn't a father who deserved love and respect. I was just a pathetic old man they tolerated out of social obligation. "People like you should settle for the minimum." The same phrase that built me had now returned to destroy me, except this time it wasn't spoken by a prejudiced teacher. It was my own blood. 3 days later, 3 days after the dinner, I kept pretending everything was normal. I called each of them to thank them for the lovely family evening and congratulate them on their promotions. They were polite, but colder, as they always were. I realize now. The following Wednesday, Robert called. "Dad, you have a few minutes? I wanted to talk about something important." My heart leaped. Maybe I had exaggerated, maybe he wanted to apologize, explain that the joke was in bad taste. "Of course. Son, want to come here? I'll make coffee. Actually, it's better if you come to my house. Michael and Andrew will be there too. Is it about, well, about your future?" My future? How interesting. I arrived at Robert's apartment at 3 in the afternoon, driving my Sentra and wearing a simple shirt from the thrift store. They were all in the living room with serious expressions they tried to disguise as loving concern. "Sit here, Dad," Andrew said, patting the sofa next to him. "We want to talk about some possibilities to improve your quality of life." Robert pulled a folder from the coffee table. Inside were color-printed brochures, all for nursing homes. My blood ran cold. "Dad, it's nothing definite." Robert began with that condescending tone I knew so well. "But we've been thinking that maybe you're very lonely in that house." "That's right," Michael agreed. "You're 65 now. And after Mom's death, it's been almost 22 years. "Michael," I interrupted. "Exactly. Too much time alone. It's not healthy." Andrew leaned forward, adopting his best persuasive tone. "Look at these places. Dad, they have activities. People your age. Medical assistance 24 hours a day." I grabbed one of the brochures. Street Vincent's nursing home. On the back, a price list. $600 a month. The cheapest of the bunch. "We already visited some," Robert said. "This one here is very good. Simple, but clean. Within what we can contribute. Within what they could contribute. $600 divided by 3 was $200 each. The price of a good pizza delivery." "And my house?" I asked, flipping through the brochures. The three exchanged glances. Robert cleared his throat. "Well, the truth is that house is too big for you. And the neighborhood is getting complicated. A lot of violence. We could sell it," Michael added quickly. "Use the money to pay for the nursing home, and there would still be a little left over for you to have your little things. And divide what's left among yourselves?" I asked. Uncomfortable silence. "Dad, it's not like that," Andrew said. "It's just that, well, we have our own families now. Children to raise, mortgages to pay. Mom's inheritance would help a lot." Mom's inheritance. A $200,000 house that Josephine had bought in the 90s, carefully chosen to seem modest. They didn't even suspect it had been paid off for decades, or that there were 17 other properties scattered around the city. "And when would this move be?" I asked. "We thought maybe by the end of the month," Robert suggested. "I already scheduled a visit to Street Vincent's for Monday. Want to go with us? End of the month? 2 weeks? Can I think about it?" "Of course." "Dad, no rush at all." Robert lied. "We just want what's best for you." I returned home in absolute silence. I didn't even turn on the car radio. I needed to process what I had discovered. My children weren't just humiliating me for fun. They were actively planning to get rid of me. That night I called Dr. Paul. "Paul, it's me. Can you come to my house? The real one, not the facade." "Charles, did something happen?" "What happened is that you were right 15 years ago. This farce is going to cause problems." "What did they do?" "They want to put me in a $600 a month nursing home." Silence on the other end of the line. "I'm on my way." Dr. Paul arrived an hour later, finding me in the downtown penthouse, with an open bottle of French wine, and an expression he had never seen on my face. "Tell me everything," he said, pouring himself a glass. I told him about the dinner, about the laughter, about today's meeting, about the nursing home brochures, and the 2-week deadline, about how they talked about the inheritance as if I were already dead. "They're acting like I'm a burden they need to manage as cheaply as possible." I finished. They want to put me in a nursing home, where they'll visit me once a month out of obligation, and get on with their lives as if I never existed. Paul took a long sip of wine. And now? Now I'm going to show them exactly who Charles Samuel Roberts is. Charles. Think carefully. It's one thing to tell the truth. It's another too. Another what? Think about revenge? I smiled for the first time in 3 days. No, Paul. I'm thinking about justice. There's a difference. What justice? Justice is giving people exactly what they deserve. That night, for the first time in 20 years, I couldn't sleep thinking about my children. But this time, it wasn't paternal worry keeping me awake. It was strategic planning. A professional investigator of my own family. For 20 years, I pretended to be stupid. Now I was going to use all my business intelligence to uncover their lives. I called Dr. Paul on Friday morning. I need all the reports from Millennium Construction from the last 6 months. Performance, attendance, corporate expenses. Everything you can get without raising suspicions. Charles, this doesn't seem like a good idea. Paul, you've been my partner for 15 years. I've never asked you for anything unethical. I just want to know if my children are the exemplary employees they think they are. Silence. I'll send you the email in 2 hours. While I waited, I began my own domestic investigation. For years, Robert left things at my house when he visited. Cell phone charger, sunglasses, even his laptop sometimes. He never suspected I knew how to use a computer. In my bedroom drawer, the real one in the penthouse, I found an iPhone charger he had forgotten a month ago. His phone was still with him, of course, but I had other plans. On Saturday afternoon, I called Robert. Son, can you come over quickly? I'm having trouble with the sink faucet, and I can't reach the plumber. Oh, Dad. Today of all days. I wanted to watch the game with the guys. Please. It's just a quick look. It must be something simple. He arrived half an hour later with a sour face. While he fixed the faucet, which had no problem, obviously, I offered him coffee. Want to charge your phone while you're here? I know you forgot your charger the other day. Oh, right. Thanks. Dad. It's almost dead. Perfect. While Robert pretended to understand plumbing, I discreetly installed a family tracking app on his phone, the kind parents use to monitor teenagers. The irony was delicious. Done. Dad. Just had to tighten it. Oh. You're so smart. I never would have known that. He smiled with that condescending superiority that was already making me sick. That's what sons are for. Right, Dad? On Sunday, Dr. Paul's emails arrived. I opened the files in my private office, with 2 computer screens and a laser printer. Equipment that poor Charles could never afford. What I discovered left me interested. Robert, the exemplary regional manager, had 23% unexplained absences in the last 6 months. Arrivals after 10 a.m. recorded 15 times. Departures before 4 p.m. on at least 12 occasions. For someone who was supposed to work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., it was impressive. Michael, the meticulous accountant, had used the corporate card 47 times for questionable expenses, $200 dinners, gasoline from stations near his house, even pharmacy purchases, all classified as representation expenses or corporate use. Andrew, the serious lawyer, maintained constant private meetings during work hours, according to reports. In March alone, he had registered 12 external meetings, lasting between 2 and 4 hours. The problem was, there was no record of clients or objectives for these meetings. More interesting still, all 3 had below-average performance compared to colleagues. They weren't bad employees, but they definitely weren't the exceptional talents they believed themselves to be. On Monday, I feigned concern and called Robert, son. Are you sure this new job isn't too strenuous? You look tired. Not at all. Dad, it's fine. In fact, the manager position is quite flexible. I can adjust my hours as needed. Adjust hours. An elegant way of saying arrive late and leave early. During the week, I tested the tracking app. It worked perfectly, Robert really did arrive between 9:30 and 10 a.m. at the company. He went out for lunches that lasted 2 hours and frequently handled external matters that were actually trips to the mall, the gym, or visits to the mistress he kept in a fancy neighborhood. Yes, I discovered the mistress too, 3 different addresses, in the last 3 months, always the same days of the week, always during hours when he should have been working. On Wednesday, I called Michael. Son, how does this company card thing work? The other day you mentioned they gave you one. Oh, it's for work expenses. Dad, meetings, gas, things like that. Nothing major? And do they control it much? Not really, as long as it's work-related. Work-related like buying blood pressure medication at the pharmacy in his neighborhood. On Thursday, it was Andrew's turn. Son, you're always running around. These new clients must be giving you a lot of work. Yes, Dad. It's exhausting, but I like to give personal attention. You know, meeting after meeting to build relationships. Relationships is one way to see it, especially considering the meetings always took place at the same physical therapy clinic where his wife received treatment. 5 months of meetings at the same place. What a dedicated client. On Friday, Dr. Paul came to dinner at the penthouse. He had a worried expression. Charles, I got the information you asked for, but are you sure you want to proceed with this? There's still time to just tell the truth and resolve everything as a family. Paul, on Monday, they're taking me to see the nursing home. How do you know? Robert called today confirming he scheduled it for 2 p.m. He said it's better to resolve this matter soon so everyone can be at peace. Paul sighed. And what's your plan? I'm still refining the details, but I already know enough to know that my dear children are not the exemplary employees they pretend to be. Are you going to fire them? Firing them would be too simple, don't you think? Any boss would do that. But I'm not just any boss. Paul, I'm their father, and fathers know how to educate children who have misbehaved. Over the weekend, I decided to expand my investigation. If I was going to do this right, I needed to fully understand how my children really saw me, not just during direct confrontations, but day to day. On Saturday morning, I called Patricia, my eldest daughter-in-law. Patricia, do you have a few minutes? I'm a little lost with some bills here. Of course, Mr. Roberts. I'll be there in an hour. Patricia arrived with that artificial smile I already knew well, but now I paid real attention to the details. The way she looked around the house as if assessing a property for purchase. How she sighed discreetly when I asked her silly questions about the phone bill. Mr. Roberts, have you thought about simplifying these things? Now there's automatic digital billing. You wouldn't even have to worry. Oh, but I'm too old for these modern things, aren't I? It's not a matter of age. It's a matter of, well, adapting to the times. For 2 hours she helped me with my bills, always with that tone of someone doing Christian charity. But what caught my attention was when her phone rang. Hi, honey, I'm at your dad's house. It's those bills. He can't figure them out alone. Uh-huh. No, I won't be long. It's a bit complicated. But it's quick. I'll be there in an hour. Complicated. Interesting. When she hung up, I asked, was that Robert? Yes. He's at home with the kids. It's good that you help each other like that. Family is everything. Right? Absolutely. Mr. Roberts, you can always count on us. After she left, I kept thinking about that tone. Complicated. As if I were a difficult child that needed to be managed. On Sunday, I used a different strategy. I called Michael and pretended to feel sick. Son, can you come over? I feel a bit weird. Dizzy. Dad, is it serious? Want me to take you to the hospital? No. No. I don't think so. It's just low blood pressure. But I was kind of alone and got scared. He arrived in 20 minutes. Genuinely worried. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe there was still salvation for our relationship. Until he answered a call in my kitchen. Hi, honey. No, it's my dad. He's having one of his attention crises. You know how he is. Always inventing little problems, so people pay attention to him. I won't be long. I just need to make an appearance for a few minutes and pretend I'm worried. Pretend I was worried. When he returned to the living room, he was smiling affectionately. How do you feel now, Dad? Better. It must have been just a scare. You have to take better care of yourself. Eat well. Not worry about silly things. Silly things. Like the bills he himself helped me understand while feigning angelic patience. Michael, can I ask you something? Of course, Dad. Do you think I'm a burden in your lives? He seemed genuinely surprised. Dad, how can you think that? I don't know. Sometimes I get the impression I bother you a lot. You never bother us. We just want to take care of you. It's our obligation. Obligation, not love. Not affection. Obligation. And about that conversation on Wednesday, the nursing home thing. Dad, we were just thinking about your well-being. It's nothing forced, if you don't want to. But you think it would be better? Long pause. Well, it would be a way for you to have more company. People your age. Activities. And would you visit me? Of course. Every weekend. Lie. I knew it was a lie. Because I knew my children. Robert barely came to my house once a month, even though I lived 20 minutes away. The prospect of driving to a nursing home in the middle of nowhere to visit his complicated dad. Maybe at Christmas. That night, I called the receptionist at Millennium Construction, not the main company, but a contractor that handled the cleaning. It was a way to get information without raising suspicions. Good evening. This is Charles, father of Robert Roberts, who works there. He forgot some keys today, and I couldn't reach him. Do you know if he's still in the office? Oh, Mr. Roberts. What a coincidence. I'm just cleaning his office, and I saw that your son Robert left early today, around 3 p.m. 3 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. What a shame. Did he mention where he was going? No, but from the hurry he was in, it must have been something important. He even left his desk messy, which he never does. Something important. Right. The weekly meeting in the fancy neighborhood. And do you also know my other sons? Michael and Andrew? I know them. Yes. What polite sons you have. They always greet us. Ask about our families. Really? Yes. The other day, Michael even gave me a tip to buy a snack for my little girl. He said it was from the company card, that it didn't make a difference. The company card. To give a tip to the cleaning lady. How generous with other people's money. And how is Andrew doing? Oh, that one's a hard worker. Always running from here to there. Meetings almost every day. You must be proud. I am. They've always been very dedicated. On Monday morning, I dressed as poor Charles and waited for Robert to pick me up for the visit to the nursing home. He arrived punctually, driving the BMW he had bought with so much effort, not knowing that I had indirectly financed it through corporate bonuses. Good morning, Dad. Ready to see your new home? New home? As if it were a voluntary and exciting move. During the drive, he talked about the benefits of the place. You'll see, Dad. It's very organized. They have nurses 24 hours, balanced meals, and the price. We'll manage. Dad. Between Michael, Andrew, and me. We'll handle it. $200 a month each, to get rid of Dad forever. The nursing home was exactly what I expected. Hallways smelling of disinfectant, overworked nurses, abandoned elderly people watching television with the volume too high. The director, a woman in her 50 seconds with a commercial smile, greeted us at the entrance. Mr. Roberts, what a pleasure to meet you. Robert told me a lot about you. I hope good things, I replied. Of course. He says you're a very calm person. That's excellent. Here at Street Vincent's we have a well-structured routine for residents like you. Residents like me. Elderly people discarded by their families. She showed us the small rooms with 2 beds, a wardrobe, and a small window. You would be here with Mr. Aziz. He's very quiet, barely speaks. Mr. Aziz was sitting on the bed staring at the wall. How long had he been there? How long since someone visited him? And visits? I asked. allowed on weekends from 2 to 5 p.m. Very flexible. 3 hours a week to see the father who raised you for 45 years. In the cafeteria, we witnessed lunchtime. Elderly people being fed like babies. Others eating alone in absolute silence. A man was crying softly in the corner. No one paid him any attention. "Is it always like this?" I asked the director. "Oh, Mr. Henry is just homesick. It's normal at first. Then he gets used to it. Then he gets used to it." As if giving up on living was a natural process of adaptation. Robert seemed satisfied with what he saw. "What do you think, Dad? Isn't it a cozy place? Cozy as a prison during the drive back?" he asked. "So, what did you think? Different from what I imagined." "In a good way?" "Robert, can I ask you something honest?" "Sure." "Dad, do you really think I deserve to end my days in a place like that?" Long silence. He drove staring straight ahead. "Dad, it's not a matter of deserving. It's a matter of practicality. You can't be alone forever, and we don't have the structure to take care of an elderly person. I'm 65, Robert, not 85. I know, but it's better to be prepared, right? And there, you won't be alone. I won't be alone. I'll be abandoned, but not alone." When we arrived at my house, Robert kissed my cheek with that usual protocol kiss. "Think about it, Dad. We just want what's best for you. What's best for me. $200 a month from each of the children I raised." That night, in the penthouse, I opened a bottle of wine and made some important calls. It was time to stop investigating and start acting. On Tuesday morning, I woke up at 5:30 a.m., not because I was nervous. Nervousness was a luxury I couldn't afford. I woke up because my body knew it was the day of truth. First stop, the salon in the upscale part of town, where I had an appointment with Elena, the stylist who had been taking care of my hair for 10 years. Not the Elena from the neighborhood where poor Charles got $15 haircuts, the professional Elena who charged $300 for a complete transformation. "Mr. Roberts." Finally. "How long has it been? I've missed you." "I've been dealing with family matters. Elena, today, I need to be impeccable. The most important meeting of my life." 3 hours later, I left there unrecognizable, haircut and styled in an elegant way, beard trimmed, nails manicured. In the mirror, I saw a 65-year-old executive who could command any company in the country, because that's exactly what I was. Back at the penthouse, I put on the black Armani suit I reserved for the most serious meetings, leather shoes, not the impossible pointy ones, but the dress shoes that gave me authority without compromising mobility. The Cartier watch Josephine had given me on our 20th anniversary, the gold rings her father left me as an inheritance. Pieces that alone were worth more than my children's annual salaries. At 10:30 a.m., I was at the Roberts Group office downtown. Sandra, my assistant, greeted me with a nervous smile. "Mr. Roberts, the documents are ready." "Should I call the gentleman now?" "Not yet. First, I want to confirm some details." I sat at my presidential desk, the solid mahogany one that took up half the office, and reviewed the files one last time. Everything perfect. Irrefutable evidence. Complete documentation. Legal precedent for termination with cause. At 11 a.m., I called Dr. Paul. "Paul, can you come up? I need you to review the documents before we begin." He entered the office 5 minutes later, elegant as always in his gray suit, but with a worried expression. "Charles, I still think you should talk to them first." "Paul, in your professional opinion, would these irregularities justify termination with cause in any company?" He sighed, glancing at the papers. "They would, and if they were ordinary employees, with no personal relationship to you, they would be fired without discussion." "Then why should I treat my children differently?" "Because they are your children, Charles." "Exactly. Paul, they are my children. And a father who doesn't teach consequences for his children's actions is not a good father." He looked at me for a long time. "You've changed." "I haven't changed. I stopped pretending." At 11:15, Sandra entered with fresh coffee and an additional folder. Mr. Roberts, the report you requested yesterday arrived. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of WhatsApp conversations that a private investigator had gotten for me. It wasn't cheap. But some investments are worth every penny. Robert's Brothers group chat. Robert, guys, on Monday we resolve this dad matter once and for all. Michael, well, it's about time. I can't stand these calls asking for help with trivial things anymore. Andrew, and did he agree to visit the nursing home? Robert, he visited, yes. He found it interesting. Translation, he accepted. He has no choice. Michael, how long do you think it will take him to get used to it? Robert, a couple of months, then he'll stop complaining. Andrew, and the house? Robert, it gets sold as soon as he moves. I already spoke with the realtor. Michael, split 3 ways. Robert, obviously. We're the ones who have been supporting him all these years. Andrew, true. At least now we can breathe. Robert, and not have to pretend we care about his little problems. Michael, cruel, but real. Andrew, family is family. But there are limits, Michael, especially when the person insists on being dead weight. I stopped reading, not because I was shocked. In 3 weeks, I had matured quite a bit regarding family disappointments. I stopped reading because I had everything I needed. Sandra, you can summon the 3 of them for 2 p.m. How do I justify it? Say it's an emergency audit. Serious irregularities were detected and need to be clarified immediately. And if they ask specifically what irregularities, say that will be discussed in the meeting. At noon, I had lunch alone in the office, reviewing my speech mentally. There could be no hesitation, no show of weakness, no sentimentality. This was a corporate meeting dealing with problem employees. The fact that they were my children was a coincidence. At 1:30 p.m., Sandra knocked on the door. Mr. Roberts, they have arrived. The 3 of them are in the conference room. How do they look? Nervous. Robert asked 3 times what the problem was. And what did you tell him? That I would explain everything. Perfect. Give me 5 minutes. Then send them in. 5 minutes later, I heard voices in the hallway. Voices I had known since they were high-pitched and childish, arguing about who broke the living room vase or ate the last slice of cake. Now they were deep and adult, but with the same anxiety of children caught doing wrong. It can't be anything serious. We didn't do anything, Andrew was saying. It must be routine, Michael replied, but without conviction. If it were routine, it wouldn't be an emergency. Right? Robert sounded irritated. This is going to ruin my whole afternoon. Your whole afternoon? Which included a 2-hour visit to the fancy neighborhood. Sandra opened my office door. Mr. Roberts, shall I send them in? Send them in. I took a deep breath. It was time. In 15 seconds. I would see my children's expressions when they discovered who really commanded their professional lives. Gentlemen, you may come in. The first thing I noticed was the absolute silence. A silence so deep I could hear the central air conditioning and the distant noise of traffic below. Robert entered first, followed by his brothers, all dressed in their best corporate suits. Ties tightened, shoes shined. Their posture was that of 3 confident executives walking into a routine meeting. For 3 seconds, Robert stopped in the middle of the room as if he had hit an invisible wall. His eyes scanned the environment, the presidential mahogany desk, the shelves of legal books, the framed diplomas on the wall, the painting with city blueprints, the corporate trophies. Then, slowly, his gaze rose to me. Dad! The word came out in an incredulous whisper. Michael and Andrew arrived right behind him with the same expressions of someone who has just seen a ghost, or more precisely, of someone who has just discovered that the person they had underestimated for 45 years was sitting at the presidential desk of the company where they worked. Please, have a seat, I said, pointing to the 3 chairs arranged in front of my desk. None of them moved. Dad, Michael repeated. This time, without cordiality. They obeyed in silence like automatons. 3 successful adult men, accustomed to commanding meetings and making decisions, transformed into confused children. I imagine you are surprised. I began, adjusting the papers on the desk. Allow me to clarify the situation. My name is Charles Roberts. I am the founder and principal shareholder of the Roberts Group, the parent company of Millennium Construction. Where you work. Silence. For the last 15 years, I have followed your careers with paternal interest, through reports. I always knew about your performance, progress, and, unfortunately, irregularities. Andrew found his voice first. Irregularities? Yes, Andrew. Irregularities. You were summoned because an emergency audit detected serious violations of corporate protocol. I picked up the first folder. Robert Samuel Roberts. Unjustified absences representing 23% of the work period in the last 6 months. Late arrivals on 47% of workdays. Unauthorized early departures in 38% of cases. Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I picked up the second folder. Michael Samuel Roberts. Inappropriate use of corporate resources totaling $12,347 in 6 months. Personal expenses incorrectly classified as representation expenses. Michael turned pale. Third folder. Andrew Samuel Roberts. Abandonment of work for 72 hours per month for external meetings without proof of professional activity. Dad, Andrew tried. Here, I interrupted, slamming the desk. My name is Charles Roberts. Mr. Roberts, if you prefer. Silence again, but this time a different silence. It was no longer shock. It was the silence of those beginning to understand the magnitude of the problem. Each of these irregularities individually would justify termination with cause in any serious company. I continued. Combined, they constitute a pattern of behavior incompatible with the values of this organization. Robert tried to regain composure. Mr. Roberts. This must be a mistake. A mistake? The fourth, thicker folder. Robert, would you like to explain what these weekly meetings are at 1247 Libertadores Avenue, apartment 85? He stopped breathing. Or you. Michael, can you clarify why your representation expenses include cat food when you are allergic to felines? Michael sank in his chair. Andrew, perhaps you can explain to us why your client meetings all take place at the downtown physical therapy clinic, where your wife receives treatment. Andrew closed his eyes. Gentlemen, I said, standing up, you have worked at my company for years, believing you were special employees, that you had natural privileges, exceptional talents that justified differential treatment. I walked to the window, turning my back to them. You were right about the differential treatment. You were wrong about the reason. I turned to face them. You had privileges, not because you are talented. You had privileges because you are my sons. And I naively believed that would motivate you to be exemplary employees. Dad. Robert tried again. Mr. Roberts, I corrected coldly. Mr. Roberts, can we explain? Explain what? Robert? How do you justify spending company time visiting your mistress? How do you explain to other employees who work 8 hours a day while you work 4? He opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. And you, Michael, how do you explain to the accountant who pays for his own lunch while you use the corporate card to buy gifts for your father-in-law? Michael was almost transparent. Andrew, how do you explain to lawyers who work overtime for extra compensation while you use work hours to resolve personal matters? We didn't know, Andrew stammered. You didn't know what? That it was wrong? Or that I was watching you? Silence. Because if you didn't know it was wrong, you don't deserve to work in any company. And if you knew it was wrong, but thought you wouldn't be discovered, I let the sentence hang, heavy with implications. Well, I said, returning to my chair, it's time for you to learn about consequences. I sat down again, opening a different folder. This one contained 3 identical envelopes, sealed with the gold seal of the Roberts Group in the upper right corner. For 3 decades, I began. Without looking at them, I built this company from scratch. I started with a plot of land inherited from my father and turned it into an empire that today employs 847 people. I lined up the 3 envelopes on the desk. In these 3 decades, I have fired 23 employees for irregularities, from the junior analyst who falsified reports to the director who diverted resources. All received exactly the same treatment: complete investigation, rigorous documentation, termination with cause. I raised my eyes to face them. Today, you join that list. No, Robert exploded, jumping from his chair. You can't do this. We are your sons. Exactly. I replied calmly. You are my sons. And a father who doesn't teach consequences for inappropriate actions is not a good father. But, he stammered, you always supported us. I supported you. Yes. I supported you when you were children learning to walk. I supported you when you were teenagers making mistakes. I supported you when you were young adults finding your way. I took the first envelope. But you are no longer young adults. Michael, you are 42 years old, married, have children, responsibilities, and yet you behave like a teenager who can break rules without consequences. Mr. Roberts, Andrew tried, adopting a professional tone. We understand we made mistakes, but we can correct them. Correct them? I laughed without humor. Andrew, you are 38 years old, and for 2 years, you have used work time to accompany your wife's medical treatment. That's not a one-time mistake. It's an established pattern. But she's my wife, and she is a capable adult who can go to physical therapy alone. Or you could have adjusted your schedule so it didn't interfere with work. Options existed. You chose the one most convenient for you and least respectful to the company. Andrew sank in his chair again. Robert, I continued, you maintain an extramarital affair using company time and gasoline resources. Besides being professionally unethical, it's disrespectful to your wife, your children, and me. You know about. I know everything, Robert. I am a businessman with 30 years of experience. Did you think I built this empire by being naive about human behavior? He looked devastated. And all of you, I continued, standing up again, share the same fundamental flaw. You believe the rules are for other people. I walked to the bookshelf, taking a specific volume. Millennium Construction Employee Handbook. You received copies when you were hired. Did any of you bother to read it? Silence. Page 23. Compliance with schedules is mandatory for all employees, regardless of position or seniority. I flipped some pages. Page 31. Corporate resources must be used exclusively for activities related to business objectives. More pages. Page 47. External activities during work hours require prior authorization and documented justification. I closed the book forcefully. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. You didn't just violate these rules. You ignored them completely, assuming that your status as sons of the poor guy living on a pension made you immune to consequences. Robert tried one last card. Dad, please, I know we made mistakes, but we're family. Family? I returned to the desk, taking a 5th folder. Let's talk about family. Robert. I opened the folder, revealing the printouts of the WhatsApp conversations. At least now we can breathe, I read aloud, and not have to pretend we care about his little problems. The 3 of them turned pale simultaneously. Family is family, but there are limits, especially when the person insists on being dead weight. I threw the papers on the desk. This is the family you want to invoke now. The same family that was planning to put me in a $600 a month nursing home. Dad, Andrew whispered. He found it interesting. Translation, he accepted. He has no choice. I read another message. I took another folder. Visitation contract for St. Vincent's Nursing Home, signed by Robert Samuel Roberts last Monday. First visit scheduled for Sunday. Robert almost fainted. Proposal for the sale of the property at 847 Flores Street, submitted to Central Realty on Tuesday. Applicant, Robert Samuel Roberts. Power of attorney, In the name of Charles Samuel Roberts. I paused. A power of attorney, which, by the way, is a forgery. How? How do you know all this? Andrew stammered. Why, my dear Andrew, I am not the confused old man you imagine. I am a businessman who controls every aspect of my properties and investments. I returned to my chair, lining up the 3 envelopes again. You want to talk about family? Let's talk. A family where a 65-year-old father is considered dead weight, where adult sons lie about work commitments to avoid helping, where private conversations include jokes about dad's little problems. Every word was like a blade. That family, gentlemen, is already dead. It died at my dinner table 3 weeks ago, when you laughed at my supposed incompetence. We didn't know, Robert tried. You didn't know what? That I would be capable of understanding you were humiliating me? That I would have enough intelligence to perceive disdain? I looked at him. I held up the 3 envelopes. Or did you not know that the poor guy you despised so much was actually the man who controlled your professional destinies? Absolute silence. Well, now you know. At 3:30 p.m., I still hadn't opened any of the envelopes. The 3 remained seated in silence, looking younger than they really were, like children called to the principal's office after a particularly serious offense. Sandra knocked on the door. Mr. Roberts, Dr. Paul has arrived. Security guards? Robert asked, alarmed. To escort you to your desks to collect personal belongings under supervision, I explained. Standard procedure for termination with cause. 2 uniformed men entered the room. Professional, polite, but clearly prepared for trouble. Gentlemen, said the taller one, we need to accompany you to your workstations for the collection of personal items. And then? Andrew asked. Then you will be escorted to the exit. Your badges and access cards have been cancelled. You're treating us like criminals, Michael protested. You are being treated like ex-employees fired for gross misconduct, I corrected. Which, technically, is what you are. Robert stood up slowly. For a moment, I thought he was going to explode, yell, make a scene. Instead, he looked at me with an expression I will never forget. You win, he said simply. This isn't a competition, Robert. It's an education. Education? Yes. For 45 years. I couldn't teach you the value of respect. Today, I succeeded. He laughed bitterly, through humiliation and revenge, through consequences. The humiliation was your idea. 3 weeks ago. I just returned it. Michael joined his brother, picking up the termination envelope. And now? Now you're going to find out what real life is like, without invisible family protection, without special privileges, without a dad to run to when things get tough. Are you really never going to want to see us again? Andrew asked. His voice choked. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang of the old paternal love. My lost, scared children asking for forgiveness. Then I remembered the laughter during dinner, the lies about work schedules, the plans to institutionalize me, the WhatsApp conversations mocking my little problems. Andrew, I said calmly, for 3 weeks. You demonstrated that you don't want a father. You want a family obligation that you'd like to outsource to a nursing home. We made mistakes. Yes, you made mistakes. And every action has consequences. The security guards positioned themselves near the door. Gentlemen, whenever you're ready. Robert looked around the office one last time. The office of the father he never really knew. How long did you plan this? I didn't plan it. You created the circumstances. But the investigation, the documents, all this takes time. It took 3 weeks. The same amount of time you took planning my institutionalization. Michael headed for the door, but stopped. Are you really going to donate everything, every cent? And, yes, what if we show that we've changed? Someday. Long pause. Michael, you had 45 years to show me you loved me. You failed. I won't give you another 45 to try again. Andrew was the last to head to the door. Can Can I ask a question? You can. Do you feel hatred? The question took me by surprise. Hatred. I analyzed my feelings carefully. No, Andrew. I don't feel hatred. Then what? Disappointment. Profound disappointment in men I raised to be better than they are. And, is there a way back? I looked at him. My youngest son. The baby I used to rock. Singing. When he cried. The little boy who ran into my arms when he got hurt. The teenager who asked me for advice about girls. Andrew, I said softly, you all killed the father I was. The Charles who loved you unconditionally died when I discovered that love was one-sided. But the man who is here now is a businessman, dealing with problematic ex-employees, who, by coincidence, also came from me. The sentence resonated through the room like a final judgment. Good afternoon, gentlemen. The security guards will escort you out. They left in silence. Robert walking like an automaton. Michael crying again. Andrew looked back one last time, as if hoping I would change my mind. I didn't. The door closed with a soft click. Paul and I were left alone in the room. Charles, he said after a long silence, are you sure about what you just did? I looked out the window, down below. 3 men in suits were leaving the building, escorted by security guards. My sons. Ex-sons. Paul, I replied, for the first time in 3 weeks. I am absolutely sure of something. Of what? I smiled for the first time since that fateful dinner. That I finally taught them what it means to have a real father. And you know what the most satisfying part was? What? They finally respected me. 3 months later. 3 months later. Sitting in the same penthouse where I planned my revenge. I can tell you what life is like after destroying your own family. It's quiet, not the bad. Tense silence of those forced dinners, where I pretended to like my children's cruel jokes. It's a different silence. Clean. Like when you finally stop hearing an irritating noise you didn't even realize was bothering you. My phone no longer rings on Sundays with Robert checking if I was okay. Translation: checking if I was still alive to inherit from. I don't get calls from Michael asking for help with bills he could solve himself. Andrew no longer shows up, feigning concern, when he really just wanted to make sure I wasn't inventing little problems. The house in the working-class neighborhood, where I pretended to live for 20 years, was sold in April. Yes, I sold it myself for $1.1 million. Quite a bit more than the $800,000 I had mentioned to them. The money went directly to the Elder Care Foundation. Ironic, isn't it? The house they wanted to sell to institutionalize me will now build dignified places for truly needy elderly people. I found out through corporate newspapers what happened to them after the firing. Robert got a job at a smaller construction company, earning a third of what he earned with me. Michael became an independent accountant. Unstable work, without the corporate benefits he loved to misuse. Andrew had to close the private practice he maintained and go back to being an associate lawyer. How did I find out? Because the city is big, but the corporate market is small. People talk. And when you're Charles Roberts of the Roberts Group, people tell you things. Mr. Roberts, Elena, an executive I met at an event, told me, I saw those Roberts boys who used to work for you. How are they? Family. Right, ex-family. I replied simply. And ex-employees, too. She seemed surprised, but had enough class not to press. The truth is, I feel relieved. For decades, I carried the weight of 3 adults who behaved like spoiled teenagers. I worried constantly. Was Robert being responsible at work? Was Michael taking good care of the finances? Was Andrew being ethical with clients? Now I know they weren't, and it's no longer my problem. But I'd be lying if I said there aren't difficult moments. Last week, I passed by a school and saw a grandfather picking up his grandson. The boy ran towards him, yelling, "Grandpa!" with that pure joy only children have. For a second, just a second, I felt a pang of something that might be regret. Then I remembered that my own grandchildren laughed when their parents humiliated me at the table. They laughed at the grandfather who prepared food with love, who always remembered birthdays, who saved money from his own livelihood to give Christmas presents. The pang passed. Dr. Paul visits me every Thursday, not to discuss business, although we have a lot of work with the foundations I've created. He comes because he cares about me. He's the only person who knows the full story and understands the nuances of what I did. Charles, he said to me last week. Don't you miss anything? What? Being a father? I thought carefully before answering. Paul, for 45 years. I was a father to 3 children, then for 20 years. I pretended to be a father to 3 adults who treated me like a burden. I discovered I prefer being an employer to 300 employees who respect me. But fatherhood is only worth it when it's reciprocal. Paul, when you love and are loved back, when you teach, and your children apply your teachings, when you sacrifice, and that sacrifice is recognized. I took a sip of the French wine we were sharing, a 1,995 Bordeaux, the kind poor Charles could never afford to drink. I was a father to 3 men who saw me as an incompetent employee. Now I'm the CEO of a company that generates 847 direct jobs and hundreds of indirect ones. Which one do you think has more social value? Paul laughed. But it was a sad laugh. You're more cynical. I'm not more cynical. I'm more realistic. And it's true. For decades, I lived in a fantasy where I believed paternal love would be naturally reciprocated. That if I was a good father, I would have children who would love me in my old age. That family was something unconditional, eternal, sacred, romantic nonsense. Family is like any other human relationship. It requires mutual investment, reciprocal respect, bilateral consideration. When one party stops investing, or worse, when one party invests only to benefit themselves, the relationship dies. My children stopped loving me at some point I can't identify. Probably when they got married and decided I was an inconvenient family obligation. They continued to play the role of loving children because it was socially convenient. But the real love died years ago. I just took too long to accept it. What bothers me most, and this is the part that makes me question if I'm a good person, is that I feel satisfaction. Genuine satisfaction when I found out Robert lost the BMW and had to go back to using public transport. Real pleasure when I discovered Michael had to cancel his children's private school. Dark joy when I was told Andrew had to sell his apartment and move to a smaller one. Does that make me a bad person? Maybe. But does it make me a human person? Definitely. Because for 20 years, I watched my children prosper, using resources I indirectly provided, while they treated me like dead weight. I watched them buy cars, apartments, expensive clothes, trips, all indirectly financed by money from the poor old man they despised. Now they are discovering what it's like to live without a safety net, without a stable job in a company controlled by Dad, without special privileges disguised as coincidences, without corporate benefits to misuse. They are living in the real world for the first time in their adult lives. And you know what? I think it will be good for them. Not good enough for me to go back. That will never happen. But maybe in a few years, when they are truly mature, when they understand the value of the things they had, when they learn to be men of integrity on their own merit, maybe I'll consider meeting the improved version of them, or maybe not. Because the truth is, I like the man I became after I stopped pretending to be smaller than I really am. I like using my real name in business meetings. I like being respected for my competence, not tolerated out of family obligation. I like making decisions based on logic, not on the romantic hope that family is sacred. The Charles who raised those 3 men is dead. The Charles who lives now is stronger, smarter, more realistic, and definitely happier. 6 months later. 6 months later, on a September afternoon, I was reviewing proposals for the new headquarters of the Elder Care Foundation when Sandra knocked on the door. Mr. Roberts, you have a visitor. Who? Your grandson, Gabriel. My heart stopped for a second. Gabriel, Robert's son, 17 years old, the boy who laughed when his father humiliated me, but who had always been my favorite grandson, even though I could never show favoritism. Is he alone? Yes. He says he needs to talk to you about college. College? Of course. Money. Send him in. Gabriel entered the room as if stepping on enemy territory. He was thinner, more mature, with that slightly slouched posture of someone carrying too much emotional weight for his age. Hi. Grandpa. Hello. Gabriel. He looked around the office with the same wide eyes his father had shown 6 months earlier. So, it's all true. What's true? That you're rich, that you always were. Yes. Awkward silence. He sat in the chair where his father had nearly fainted. Why did you never tell us? Because I believed that hiding my wealth would protect the family from the corruption that easy money brings. And did it protect? I looked at him, 17 years old, handsome like his mother, with the bright intelligence all the Roberts seemed to inherit. What do you think? He laughed bitterly. I think it didn't work very well. Why? Because my dad is a mess. My mom is thinking about leaving him. My uncles, well, you know what happened to them. And Joe. He paused. I'm confused. The answer came out more honest than he probably intended. Why? Because my whole life, my dad talked about you as if you were, a poor guy we had to take care of, help out. And now I find out it was a lie. It wasn't a lie. He exploded. My dad really believed it. We all believed it. Gabriel, I said calmly. You laughed when he humiliated me at the table. He stopped as if he had been slapped. Remember when he made the toast? To our father, who has finally accepted that he is nothing in life. Silence. You laughed. Along with everyone. Genuine, amused laughter. As if your grandfather's humiliation was family entertainment. I was a kid. You were 16, Gabriel. You weren't a kid. You were a young man who learned from his family that disrespecting elders is acceptable, as long as it's done in a group. He began to cry. Not the manipulative crying I had seen before, but genuine tears of shame. I regret it. I know. Can I fix this? The question they all asked. The question I expected, but feared answering. Gabriel, do you want to know the difference between you and your father? He nodded, wiping his nose. Your father regretted it when he found out I had money. You are regretting it because you understood you hurt someone who loved you. It's different. Completely different. I got up and went to the window. Your father spent 6 months trying to call me, sending letters asking for forgiveness, but always mentioning financial difficulties, always hinting that a second chance would solve his problems. And me? You came here, knowing you owe me nothing, knowing I burned bridges with your family, knowing I could throw you out and never think about it again. I turned to look at him. Why did you come? Because I wanted you to know that I understood. Understood what? That you're not the bad guy. That the adults in my family failed. I returned to my chair. This conversation was going in a direction I hadn't anticipated. And what do you intend to do with that understanding? Nothing. I don't want to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that. We're not all the same. I looked at him for a long time. 17 years old. The age where you can become a decent person, or follow the bad examples you received at home. Gabriel, can I ask you something? Sure, if you were me at that table, hearing the laughter, how would you react? He thought carefully. I don't know. Probably. I'd probably be devastated. And after discovering the nursing home plans, the WhatsApp conversations, the whole truth, I think I'd be angry. Angry enough to do what you did. Long pause. Then maybe you understand that what I did wasn't gratuitous cruelty. It was delayed education. I understand. I opened my desk drawer and took out a business card. Gabriel, are you in your junior year? Yes. What do you want to study? Medicine. But, well, now it's going to be hard to pay for private university. State university, if I can get in, or the national university if I get a spot. I wrote something on the back of the card. Take this to Dr. Martin Costa at the Victims of Family Abandonment Foundation, It's one of the institutions I finance. M, what is this? It's a scholarship program for young people who show the potential to be better than their families. He looked at the card, incredulous. But there are conditions. What conditions? First, you will work in our clinics during college. It's not easy work, taking care of abandoned elderly people. I'll do it. Second, this is between you and me. No one in your family can know. Understood. Third, if I ever see that you are repeating your father's patterns, the scholarship ends instantly. I won't. I promise you. Don't promise me. Gabriel, show me. He stood up, clutching the card in his hand. Thank you. Grandpa. Don't call me Grandpa yet. You've earned the right to call me Charles. The title of Grandpa. That you'll have to earn. He nodded. Understood, thank you, Charles. After he left, I stayed alone in the office, thinking that maybe there was still hope. But I also made a decision that afternoon. Gabriel would be the test. If I could maintain a healthy relationship with him based on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and genuine affection, without the toxicity that had poisoned my relationships with his father and uncles, then maybe I hadn't completely lost the ability to be a family man. But if Gabriel also disappointed me, if he also proved to be just another Roberts looking for easy benefits, then I would close that chapter of my life forever. Gabriel kept his word. He started the scholarship program at the Victims of Family Abandonment Foundation and began working at our downtown elder care clinic, according to Dr. Costa's reports. He was exemplary, always punctual, respectful with the patients, genuinely interested in learning. More importantly, he never mentioned our agreement to anyone in his family. I know this because I still had ways of monitoring what was happening in the Roberts household, not through investigators this time, but through the simple fact that the corporate world talks. And when your ex-sons are struggling, people notice. Robert's situation had worsened considerably. The smaller construction company where he worked was going through financial difficulties. There were rumors of layoffs. His BMW had, indeed, been repossessed. And Patricia, his wife, had started working as a real estate agent to help with household expenses. Michael's independent accounting business wasn't doing well either. Without the corporate structure and stable clients that Millennium Construction had provided, he was struggling to build a client base. They had moved to a smaller apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood. Andrew seemed to be adapting better. He was working as an associate lawyer in a medium-sized firm. He was truly learning what it meant to work for your salary, instead of floating on family connections. His marriage, however, was under strain. Apparently, his wife was not handling the financial downgrade well, and through all this, none of them had tried to contact me directly since the day they were fired. November 2022. Gabriel came for his monthly visit on a Thursday afternoon. He looked different, more confident, more mature. Working with abandoned elderly people was changing him, just as I had hoped. "How are things at the clinic?" I asked. "Tough," he said honestly. "Yesterday I met an 87-year-old man whose children abandoned him there because they didn't want to deal with his Alzheimer's. He keeps asking when his son is coming to visit. His son hasn't been there in 8 months." We sat in silence for a moment. "It makes me think about what almost happened to you," Gabriel said quietly. "The difference," I replied, "is that man's children probably didn't have the resources to care for him properly. Your father and your uncles simply didn't want to be inconvenienced." Gabriel nodded. "I'm starting to understand why you did what you did. Good. Understanding consequences is the first step toward making better decisions." He shifted in his chair. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I might not answer. Do you miss them? My dad, my uncles." The question I had been asking myself for months. "I miss who I thought they were," I said carefully. "I miss the sons I thought I had raised. But those men, the ones who laughed at me, the ones who planned to store me in a nursing home, the ones who stole from my company. No, Gabriel, I don't miss them, but they're still your children, biologically." Yes, in all the ways that matter. No. Gabriel was quiet for a long time. My dad asks about you sometimes. What does he ask? If you're okay? If you're still angry? And what do you tell him? That I don't know. That we don't talk about you, smart kid. Gabriel, I continued, your father had 65 years to show me respect. He chose to show me contempt. That's not anger speaking. That's just cause and effect. December 2022. The holidays were different that year. For the first time in decades, I spent Christmas alone. Well, not completely alone. Dr. Paul invited me to his family's dinner, and Sandra, my assistant, organized a small gathering at the foundation for elderly residents who had nowhere to go. But it was the first Christmas without the traditional Roberts family dinner, without the forced smiles and obligatory gifts, without having to pretend I enjoyed my children's company while they barely tolerated me. It was peaceful. I received no calls, no cards, no messages from Robert, Michael, or Andrew. Part of me wondered if they even remembered it was Christmas, or if they were too busy dealing with their new financial realities to think about their discarded father. Gabriel sent me a text on Christmas morning. Merry Christmas, Charles. Thank you for giving me the chance to be better than my family. It was the best Christmas present I had received in years. January 2023. Gabriel's second monthly visit brought unexpected news. My parents are getting divorced, he said, without preamble. I put down my coffee cup. I'm sorry. Are you? Really? The question was sharp, challenging. He was testing me. Yes. Gabriel, I am sorry. Whatever your father's faults, I never wanted his marriage to fail. Children suffer when families break. Even after everything he did to you, I thought you'd be, I don't know, happy. Maybe. Gabriel, one of the differences between a good man and a bad man is that a good man doesn't rejoice in unnecessary suffering. Even when it happens to people who hurt him, he absorbed this in silence. How are you handling it? I asked. Better than I expected, I think. Seeing what happened with you prepared me for the idea that families aren't as permanent as they teach us to believe. Wise beyond his years. And your father? How is he handling it? Gabriel hesitated. Not well. He's been drinking more. He lost his job last month. My mom says he just sits in the house, talking about how everything went wrong after that dinner. That dinner, as if the problem was the dinner itself, not the decades of disrespect that led to it. He blames you for everything, Gabriel continued. He says you destroyed the family out of spite. And what do you think? I think he destroyed the family by forgetting how to love his father. Sometimes Gabriel said things that reminded me so much of myself at his age. It was almost unsettling. March 2023. 1 year later. 1 year after the fateful dinner, Gabriel arrived for his monthly visit with news. News that would test everything I thought I knew. About forgiveness and second chances. My dad wants to see you, he said. I had been waiting for this moment for months, but it still hit me like a physical impact. What did you tell him? Nothing. I told him I would ask, but that I couldn't promise anything. What does he want? Gabriel pulled out a letter. Handwritten, not typed. Robert's familiar calligraphy filled 2 pages. He asked me to give you this. I took the letter, but didn't open it immediately. Did you read it? I didn't. He said it was private. I left the letter on my desk. And what do you think I should do? That's not my decision. I'm asking for your opinion. Gabriel, you know us both now. You've seen what he did, and you've seen what I became. What would you do? Gabriel was quiet for a long time, looking at the city skyline out the window. A year ago, I would have said you should forgive him, he said finally. Family is family, right? That's what I was taught. And now, I've spent a year taking care of elderly people whose families abandoned them. I've seen what happens when love turns into obligation, when respect turns into resentment. He turned to me. I think some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Not because of the fire, but because the foundations were rotten from the start. That's a very mature perspective for an 18-year-old. I've had good teachers. After Gabriel left, I sat alone with Robert's letter for 2 hours before opening it. When I finally did, I found exactly what I expected. Apologies mixed with justifications, regret mixed with blame, and underneath it all, the same fundamental misunderstanding that had always defined our relationship. Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I had to try. These past few months have been hell. I lost my job. Patricia left me. I'm about to lose the house. But the worst part isn't the money. It's knowing I destroyed my relationship with my father. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, and I realize now that we were wrong. The dinner, the nursing home, all of it. We disrespected you, and you had every right to be angry. But, Dad, what you did to us was so extreme. Firing us, cutting us out of your will, turning Gabriel against us. It feels like you wanted to destroy our lives completely. I know I made mistakes, but I'm still your son. Doesn't that count for something? Can't we find a way to get past this? I'm not asking to get my job back, or for money. I just want my father back. I want the chance to show you I can be better. Please, Dad, give me one more chance. Robert. I read the letter 3 times, searching for any sign that Robert truly understood what he had done wrong. I found apologies for specific actions, but no understanding of the deeper betrayal. He felt bad about the dinner, about the nursing home, but he still framed my response as extreme and destructive. He still didn't understand that consequences are not punishment, but education. Most revealingly, he mentioned losing his job, his wife, his house, but not once did he express concern for how his actions had hurt me. His regret was entirely self-centered, and the line about turning Gabriel against us revealed he still saw our grandson as a possession to be fought over, rather than a young man making his own choices. I wrote my response that same afternoon. Robert, I received your letter. I appreciate you taking the time to write it by hand. You say you want your father back, but I'm not sure you ever really knew who your father was. For 65 years, you only saw what you chose to see, either the poor man who needed your help, or the rich man who could solve your problems. You never saw Charles Roberts, the man who built a business from nothing, who created jobs for hundreds of people, who spent decades protecting his children from the corruption of easy money, only to find they had become corrupted anyway. You apologize for specific actions, but you show no understanding of the pattern those actions represented. This was not about one dinner or one nursing home plan. It was about a lifetime of disrespect, disguised as love. You say my response was extreme, but you still fail to understand that I did not destroy our family. I simply stopped pretending it existed. I wish you the best in rebuilding your life. Robert, I genuinely hope you find happiness and success, but I will not be part of that journey. The father you remember is gone. The man who remains has no space in his life for people who mistake tolerance for love. Charles. I sealed the letter and gave it to Gabriel on his next visit, with instructions to deliver it, only if Robert specifically asked about my response. June 2023. Gabriel graduated from high school with honors and was accepted into the National University for Medicine. I attended his graduation ceremony, sitting in the back, watching from a distance, as he walked across the stage to receive his diploma. Robert was there too, looking older and more worn than his 56 years. He saw me, but made no attempt to approach. We simply nodded at each other across the auditorium, an acknowledgement between strangers who once shared a last name. After the ceremony, Gabriel found me in the parking lot. Thanks for coming. I'm proud of you. Did you see my dad? I saw him. He got your letter. And, Gabriel shrugged. He was angry at first, called you heartless, cruel, but then he got quiet for a long time. I think part of him knows you're right. And how do you feel about all this, Gabriel? Having a family divided like this? He considered the question seriously, as he always did. I feel sad, he said finally. sad that it came to this. But I don't. I don't regret it, because I've learned something important this year. What's that? That love, without respect, isn't really love. It's just habit. December 2023. 2 years later, 2 years after the fateful dinner, I received an unexpected visitor. Not Gabriel, who was in his first semester at the National University, excelling in his studies and continuing his work at the foundation on weekends. It was Andrew. Sandra announced him nervously, unsure how I would react. I almost told her to send him away, but curiosity got the better of me. He looked different, thinner, more gray hair, wearing a suit that had seen better days. The confident lawyer who once sat in my office, justifying his behavior, was gone, replaced by a man who had clearly learned what humility looks like. "Charles," he said, using my name instead of Dad, a small sign of respect that did not go unnoticed. "Andrew, thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided to see you yet. You have 5 minutes to explain why you're here," he nodded, accepting the terms. I came to apologize, not to ask for anything, not to try and rebuild our relationship, just to apologize. "I'm listening. 2 years ago, I participated in humiliating and planning to abandon a man who spent his entire life sacrificing for his children. That man deserved respect, gratitude, and love. Instead, we gave him cruelty, disguised as concern." He paused, composing himself. "I've spent 2 years learning what it's like to actually work instead of floating on family connections. I've watched my marriage strain under financial pressure. I've watched my children adapt to a smaller house, a more modest lifestyle. And mostly, I've realized that every struggle we've faced is a direct result of taking for granted the advantages we never earned. Advantages provided by a father we never bothered to truly know or appreciate." Andrew sat down, uninvited, but somehow it didn't feel presumptuous. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Charles. I know I don't deserve it. I'm here because I needed you to know that at least one of your sons finally understands what he lost." "What do you think you lost?" "Andrew? A father who loved us, despite our flaws. A man who built something extraordinary and could have taught us how to do the same. A chance to be the kind of men who deserved the sacrifices you made." I studied his face, looking for any sign of manipulation or selfish motivation. I found none. "Why now?" I asked. "Because Gabriel told me something that's been haunting me for months." "What did he tell you?" "He said that love without respect isn't really love, it's just habit." Andrew's voice broke slightly. I realized, that's all we ever gave you. Habit. We went through the motions of being your sons, without ever actually loving the man you were. We sat in silence for several minutes. "I should go," Andrew said finally. "I just needed you to know that your lesson, it worked. Too late to repair what we broke, but it worked." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm proud to have been your son, even if I was never worthy of it." After he left, I sat alone in my office for hours, feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Confusion. For 24 months. I had been certain of my choices, confident in my decisions, at peace with the consequences I had imposed. Andrew's visit had introduced something I wasn't prepared for. Doubt. Not doubt about whether my actions were justified. They absolutely were. Doubt about whether forgiveness was possible, whether redemption could be real, whether some relationships could be rebuilt from scratch, instead of just being abandoned. The final lesson. Yes, there is a lesson in all this. It's not about revenge, or justice, or even family. It's about respect. For 65 years, I allowed people to treat me as less than I was, because I believed that's what love required. I thought being a good father meant accepting disrespect, tolerating cruelty, and always being available to solve problems for people who saw me as a convenient solution rather than a human being worthy of dignity. I was wrong. Love, without respect, is not love at all. It's codependency, or manipulation, or habit, disguised as affection. When I finally demanded respect, when I finally showed my children exactly who I was, and what I was capable of, everything changed. Some relationships ended, but at least one became real for the first time. Andrew earned his way back to my table, not by apologizing, but by changing, not by asking for forgiveness, but by becoming someone worthy of it, not by appealing to family obligation, but by proving he could treat me as a human being who deserved dignity. That is the difference between redemption and manipulation. Redemption requires change. Manipulation only requires better apologies. Gabriel never had to earn his way back, because he never really left. He learned from his family's mistakes instead of repeating them. Robert and Michael, they are still waiting for me to go back to being the man who accepted their disrespect as the price of their company. That man is dead, and I don't mourn his passing. Where I am now, today I am 68 years old. I am richer than ever, respected in my industry, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, rather than what I can provide. I have a grandson who genuinely loves me, and a son who authentically respects me. It's not the family I started with, but it's infinitely better than the family I was pretending to have. Most importantly, I have my dignity. For the first time in decades, no one treats me as a burden, a convenience, or an obligation. Every person in my life chooses to be there, and I choose to have them there. That mutual choice, that mutual respect, is what real family looks like. There are final words. And if you're watching this, and you recognize yourself in my story, if you are the parent being taken for granted, the elderly person being planned around instead of planned with, the family member whose needs always come last, let me tell you something. You deserve better. You deserve to be treated with dignity, respected for your contributions, and loved for who you are, rather than what you provide. And if the people in your life cannot or will not give you that respect, you have every right to find people who will. Family is not an excuse for abuse. Love is not justification for disrespect. And forgiveness is not an obligation you owe to people who refuse to change. Set your boundaries. Demand your dignity to protect your peace. And remember, people will treat you exactly how you allow them to treat you. Choose wisely. This has been William's Revenge Stories. If this story resonated with you, please like this video. Subscribe for more real stories about family, respect, and standing up for yourself. And comment below, telling me where you are watching from. Your support means everything to this channel. Remember, you are worthy of respect. You deserve genuine love. And you have the power to change how people treat you. Until next time, take care and never forget your value.